Benefits of having a tiny girlfriend is it makes me look bigger. So in these photos, obviously I'll get the, oh, you don't have to. All right, so today's session's not going to be a very heavy one. At the moment, I'm kind of resting and recovering, but not stopping with training because I need the nutrient partitioning, and I can't mentally stop with training because I need to keep going with things, feel like I'm always progressing, even though I should rest a little more at the moment. So I'm just doing 2 sets of each exercise. Reason for this being is because going into comp, I just did a comp 2 weeks ago. Going into that comp, I had lower calories, obviously, because I was competing, and I had increased my training intensity by a lot because I was trialing something, which worked really well. It was a good trial, but it should have been done with higher calories. So now that I've got my calories up a bit, I'm just resting, just to replenish everything and recover from everything. Then I'll go back into the harder training with the higher calories up, but the calories are doing me good at the moment just for recovery purpose. But I feel like my body hasn't fully recovered properly yet, so I'm still taking it easy for this week and probably next as well. I'm just going to do 2 sets of each exercise. Today's going to be a leg day. Nothing crazy, no crazy movements or anything like that, just keeping it really basic. A few warm-up exercises, activation type thing, go into a compound exercise like a leg press, nothing too much, and then back to some accessories and isolations. All right, so I'm gonna do some activation exercises. I have already stretched prior to this. I did a couple of little exercises as well for core, just did some leg foam rolling, stretches, static stretches. I should have done dynamic, but actually I did some dynamic stretches too. Now I'm just going to activate and warm up with some leg curls, and then I'll go to leg extension. Today I'm just going to be keeping everything really slow and controlled, while really focusing on contracting the muscle and then just controlling it. Not worrying too much about going to failure. Just want to get a certain amount of stimulus that it feels like I'm actually getting a good contraction with each repetition, and then move on to the next exercise. On this one I'm going to be focusing on the stretch and just really holding and contracting hard at the top. So hold, contract, bring it down nice and slow and controlled, focusing on getting a good stretch there, and then bring it back up and contract hard. Probably should have worn my shorts today. Not going to see much leg contractions with these 3/4 on. Pretty much trying to keep it to a rep range of 12 max today as well. Trying not to stick out my ass while I'm doing it and bending my hips like that, because then it's taking it off the hamstring. Really want to focus on keeping the hamstring, my pelvis pushed into the padding, and just focusing on contracting and then controlling and stretching it down. Give a quick stretch. On this first exercise, I'm just going to have a minute rest between sets because it's more of an activation. All right, next exercise, unilateral leg extension. Just doing this as a warm-up type activation exercise again. So just going to really focus on squeezing, contracting the muscle, and then stretching it down with a nice, slower, controlled eccentric. I do like this movement too because it's a different angle than the other leg extension. The other leg extension is more so just a forward motion. This one comes out on an angle, so it does. Really squeeze, contract, and control. Squeeze, contract, and control. Swap it over straight into the other leg. Again, squeeze, contract, and control. Get a good stretch down the bottom there. Stretch, contract, control it down. The thing I love about this exercise, if you get in nice and close, you can see the little ripples in the quadriceps on the way down there. See them rippling through. Yeah. Increase the weight a little bit for the next one. You can go straight into it really without a rest because that last set took probably a good 45 seconds. So straight back into it with a little bit of extra load. Probably still not enough, so I'm just going to up it a little bit more. Yeah, that feels much better. And again, really focusing on contracting hard and controlling it back down, getting a good stretch. Kind of fucking boring, this deload stuff, and I have a lot of clientele that don't like doing deload. They're like, oh, let's just skip it. I'm not tired yet, but it's always necessary to do a deload because it's not for if you're feeling so fucked you can't train anymore. It's to prevent that from fucking happening in the first place. So fatigue management. Unfortunately, I took myself into that place where I feel so fucked that I can't train properly anymore. So now I'm forced to pull things back. Generally I would do a deload, but I was coming into comp and you don't really get to not train going into a comp because you have to focus on nutrient partitioning and carb loading and low days, high days, all that type of stuff. So yeah, you got to keep pushing through with your training pretty much. Feels a bit lighter on this leg because this is my dominant leg. Not sure why. I'm right-handed. My left leg is dominant, but I see that quite often with people. And maybe I was just talking shit because I spoke too soon and now it's starting to feel weaker like the other one. One more. Good activation. Always good to squeeze the blood in after the set as well. Not much leg detail at the moment. Not because I'm a fat cunt coming out of comp, but because my legs are already on a little bit of a pump, so they're somewhat inflamed. So the next one, I think we got leg press. Due to it being almost like a deload week, I've decided instead of hogging up all the fucking weights in the gym, loading up this leg press, I'll keep it somewhat lighter and just do a unilateral leg press instead. This will just be a warm-up this set, I think. Get the feel of it. Then I'll see if I'll up the weight for a working set. Alright, so I'm getting a nice full range of motion all the way down. Bringing my knee somewhat close to my shoulder in the same direction. Although I'm targeting quads more, so it's more of a straight stance, but I'm not going too low and too close. Especially as a unilateral, that wouldn't really work. So coming down nice and controlled, press up nice and controlled too, and straight back down without locking out the knee. Just a nice, steady, smooth motion. It's actually feeling somewhat heavier than what I thought it would. Won't be going too much more weight than this on the working set. Right, swapping it over. Same again, line my foot up. So it's not too close and low, but not too high and wide either. So kind of getting in between what you do for a close and low stance and high and wide stance leg press. Again, lining up the knee with the shoulder, coming straight back. Well, not so much lining it up because I'm not doing a high wide stance, but keeping my knee out enough that I can get a decent range of motion because I don't have my big fat bubble gut in the way. Controlling it down, controlling it up, straight back down without locking out the knee. Can even do a slight pause on the bottom of this movement. And while I'm here, I might as well do some calf raise as well because I've got lacking calves. So I have been doing supersets with leg press and calf raise quite a bit. And because the weight's so light, I'll keep it at unilateral as well. Just contracting the calf and stretching it. Calves might be so small that you can't even see them contracting. Definitely my shitter calf, this one too. Nice big stretch on it. Nice hard contraction. Keeping everything nice and controlled. Swapping over to the strong calf. Yeah, my left leg really does have dominance on the right. Not that there's much to this calf either, but you can clearly see a difference from the other one. which also makes it beneficial to do this unilateral work, starting with the right side. Try and catch the right up to the left. Always doing unilateral stuff, you want to start with your weaker side, your less dominant side, because doing that part of the exercise is going to fatigue you somewhat before you get it onto your other side, which is your stronger. So you should be able to match reps from side to side. Alright, so next we're going into a seated hamstring curl, because personally, for myself, I feel like seated hamstring curl is the most effective, and I can get the biggest, hardest contraction on it, and I seem to be able to stretch it up further than I can on a laying hamstring curl, where my legs are still somewhat soft at the knees, so it's not a full stretch on there. I've already warmed up hamstring, so I'll start at a reasonable weight straight off the bat. Make sure everything's lined up nice and tight. Pointing my toes back towards me, so I get a good contraction and a good stretch on the way up. So coming down, contracting hard, squeeze for a second or two, bring it back up nice and controlled, get a nice big stretch. Probably could be getting more of a stretch, so I'll bring the seat back slightly. Feel like I'm getting better stretch here. I can now bring that down there. Now I've got a full stretch there. So go down again, contract, up, nice big stretch there, good. Feels much better. Always really important to make sure your settings on seat and all the pins around here are correct before you get started on this, so you can get a nice big hard contraction on the bottom without your feet slipping off the padding, and a nice big stretch up the top here. Another common mistake is people will put the weight too high, and when they come down, they'll push down like that and start using other muscles, secondary muscles, to get the curl done. What you want to do is plant yourself into the seat nice and hard, get a weight that you can really contract hard, and then control back up and stretch. Contract hard, control and stretch. Don't worry too much about heavy weights. A lot of people go into automatic ego mode where they start putting massive weight on there by accident, sometimes on purpose, and it really starts to compromise form. Just try not to get yourself into that habit. Another bad thing that causes that habit is programs with progressive overload. Now, me with my clients, I also program with progressive overload, but I constantly remind my clients to not take it to a weight where you're compromising technique because you're going with too much load. Always make sure that you control the weight and don't let the weight control you. Whenever I'm doing hammies, I always like to get a nice stretch between sets as well. I think it helps to prevent hamstring injuries, which are quite easy to obtain. Quite the fragile muscle at times. Next set, I'll go a little bit heavier, because that was pretty easy, but not too much, because I am still sticking around the probably 70 to 80% intensity mark in regards to weight. I'll rest on this. I was just talking about how my son, he's doing quite well with his sprinting and stuff. He trains quite hard. I think he trains 3 days a week, and he's quite often got sprints on. I asked him yesterday, how much do you weigh, little man? Because he's got like juicy glutes and thick legs now from his training. He's got quite defined muscle as well, and he's only 13 years old. He weighs 55.1 kilos. He's about that tall. And I said to him, wow, you're doing really well. When I was 29, although it was a more, let's say, let's not beat around the bush, it was a drug-induced fucking weight. I was 56 kilos at the age of 29. So he's 13 at 51.1. I was 29 at 56 kilos. But that was because of very, very poor health choices. So let's say that much, yeah. I haven't trained with my son properly yet. Like, I'll go to his training and watch his training, but his training is the complete opposite to mine because his training as a sprinter, everything's fast twitch muscle fibers. Everything I'm doing is more so slow twitch muscle fibers. So his stuff, what he does is all high intensity stuff because he's trying to train for a more high intensity of results. Well, his is much more healthy than mine. Mine's the type of look that's going to shorten your lifespan. So next we've got leg extension, bilateral leg extension. I'm not going to go too heavy first set. It's definitely not a warm-up, but I'm not going too heavy. I'll go for 12 to 15 reps on this one, and then next set I'll increase the weight and probably go 12 reps. Make sure everything's all adjusted and lined up where it should be. So I can get a nice big stretch on the bottom. This needs to come back a little bit so I can get a better contraction. I'm going to anchor myself down with the side handles here so I can get a nice contraction. You want to imagine that you're doing this movement from the hip, not from the knee. So imagine you're doing it from the hip so you can contract all of your quads, especially the rec fem. Hold, contract, control down and stretch, just like I've been doing with everything else. Well, a bit shaky on that one. Don't know what's going on there.
Weight.
I know what it is. I'll fix it on the next set. I'll explain at the end of this one. All right, so the reason this leg was getting so shaky is because over time, these leg extension machines start to bend, the padding starts to bend, so there's a lot more pressure on this leg, which is fully under the load. That's why it's solid and it's not shaking. And this one's getting a lot of load taken off it, so it started shaking a lot because it's not taking the same weight as this leg. So neurologically, it's hard to control. So this one started bouncing. That's because if you have a look at the padding, over time, this end, because it's under more load than this end, starts to bend out that way. So best thing I can do at the moment, really, is just set it up. It's probably not thick enough, but I'll put my leg under that just so it kind of evens it out. Hopefully that evens it out enough to be able to get the same load on each leg. All right, so last set was a bit shaky on the left leg because over time these leg extensions tend to get pushed out on this end of the bar somewhat because this side's under more load than this side. So what I'm going to do this time to try and even it out a bit is just stick my towel here, get my leg under there, and hopefully that evens it out. So this time my leg isn't shaking like that every time I do a fucking repetition. See how it goes. Feels like it's evened it out somewhat. Feels much better. Still a little shaky, but much better. Shaking more each time. I'm going to put some more padding under it. Just trying to even it out a little bit more. Much better. Yeah, that was much better. All right, so not just because it's leg day, because every day I'm in the gym I do this, because carbs have always been a lacking muscle part of mine, body part of mine. I train them religiously every day, and that doesn't mean every day of my life, it means every day that I'm in the gym training. So I would do this also at the end of a push day or a pull day or an arms day or whatever. I choose this machine because I can get a nice big stretch on the eccentric and hold it there for a second, and on the concentric I can get a nice big full range of motion on the concentric end of the rep and hold it there for a second or two And then after that, I go straight onto this, which is a 20 kilo kettlebell, and I do tibialis curls with that. So I hook it onto the end of my foot, and I do tib curls just to target the tibialis here. So even though I'm training this religiously, I'm still keeping it at about 70% intensity. That's why there's not too much load on there. So up, contract, distributing the weight evenly across the balls of my feet, coming down, stretching and hold the stretch. Contract, control, stretch. Control, contract, control, stretch. Nothing too explosive on this movement. Straight into the tib curl. On my weaker side, first. So I want to start in a stretch position, bring it up, contract it, control it down, back into the stretch. Can go a little bit more explosive on the contraction, on the concentric, sorry, for this movement, as long as it's nice and controlled on the eccentric. Swapping over to the dominant side. Strange, all of my leg muscles are dominant on the left for some reason, except for my tibialis. Seems to be dominant on the right. Now I've pretty much rested my calves. Haven't rested from a fatigue standpoint, but I've rested my calves while I was doing the tib curls, so I can go straight back into the calves. Again, stretching, contracting, and controlling everything. All right, I've learned over time that I really need to focus on doing some static stretches after my leg session as well. It seems to help a lot. So I just keep it to my tighter areas. Like I have tight hamstrings all the time. I have tight glutes. I have tight hip flexors. So I'll do some hamstring stretches, some glute stretches, and some hip flex stretches. So this will be the hamstring one. I'll keep it a little bit dynamic at first. Just bringing my toe back towards me while I slump into it. So I get a nice big stretch in the hamstring. After I've done a few of them, I'll just hold the stretch. Really feel a nice big stretch in the hammy. Trying to keep the leg as straight as possible. Bringing the toe back to get an even better stretch. Can feel a nice stretch in my calf like that too. I don't mind turning this one to the side as well, and also stretching my adductor, which is tight too. And of course stretching both sides. Again, do some dynamic. And then hold the static while pulling the toe back. And keeping the leg straight. Always breathe when stretching too, don't hold your breath. Muscles need oxygen too. And again, turning it to the side, to hit the adductor. Also do some hip flexor stretches. This is called the couch stretch. Well, I don't have a couch here, so we're using the bench. Lifting this side up, so it pulls through the hip flexor here while flexing the glute, so it pulls even tighter, and just doing some dynamic movements like this. And reaching up to hold for a static movement. Really, really flexing the glute hard to stretch through to the hip flexor. And static. Flexing the glute nice and hard to pull it through. And last but not least, do the pigeon stretch to get a nice stretch on the glutes. Nothing dynamic on this one, just a nice static stretch and hold while breathing. really sitting into the glute to get a nice big stretch on the glute. And swapping over. Sitting into the glute again. Feel a nice big stretch and then breathe. Oh, that'll do for stretches. All right, now we'll do some photos with small fry over here. We need to, the benefits of having a tiny girlfriend is it makes me look bigger. So in these photos, obviously I'll get the, oh, you don't have to suck me off now. That can wait until after. Anyway, yeah, in these photos I'll be trying to out-angle her so I look even bigger.